Most men don't realize this, but the reason they keep hitting the same ceiling in their faith, in their marriage, or in their business leadership isn't a lack of discipline. It's an unhealed wound that they've learned to survive instead of confront. Look, I understand that there is a significant challenge. There's a lot of tension to feel here. There's high capacity men who, like you, hopefully you're strong, you're responsible, you're productive, yet you feel stuck. You seem to be reacting more to situations, and you are pretty emotionally guarded with your wife, with your friends, maybe in the business mastermind that you're in. But it's not that way because you're broken. It's that way because the pain you experienced at some point previously in your life was never processed. So, in this specific episode, I want to help you walk away with three things. The first one is I want to help you identify the wounds that still influence your decisions to this day. Number two, I want to help you to understand the beliefs and behaviors that those wounds created. And then the third thing is I want to help you to begin turning pain into purpose without pretending that it didn't hurt. And if you stay all the way to the end, I'm gonna invite you into a radical transformation that we have created, and I'm super excited about. By the way, my name is Ryan James Miller, and I have coached faith-driven, successful men for the better part of 15 years. And I've seen patterns across leaders, across entrepreneurs, across husbands and fathers. And I've personally experienced every single one of these same things walking through, or really creating and then walking through, this wound analysis framework. And by the way, this is the same framework behind my book, Wounds: How Hurt, Heartache, and Tragedy Become the Keys to Unlocking Greatness. Healing doesn't start with fixing. It starts with honesty. That's where step one comes in. Men of greatness, rise and stand tall. All right. When we're talking about the wound analysis framework, there are three components to it that I want to walk through with you over the next 15 minutes or so. But it's not just going to be about explanation. It's going to be about some education and practical application. So the first thing I want to talk to you about is acknowledging my hurt. The whole idea here is you cannot heal what you refuse to name. This was me for a long time, and so many men that I coach, they often come to me a little bit covert. And what I mean by that is they come to me with this desire to learn, to grow, to get better, typically in their business, sometimes in their marriage, sometimes with some other personal growth area. But they minimize their pain because at some point in their life, or maybe for the majority of their life, survival of that pain required them to be stronger. If you've read my book, you'll know that I say that specifically for young men, young boys, one of the biggest challenges that we live with is this idea of getting up, dusting ourselves off, and trying again after we're hurt. And I am very anti the sissification of society today, and everybody gets a medal and yada, 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 all those things. But at the same time, we have to recognize that if from a very young age, we were told not to show emotion, if we were told to hold back the tears, to hide the pain, then we will continue to carry that into our adult life. We have to muster up the strength to not show weakness. But what I've recognized on this journey that I've been on, again, as well as the one for so many men that I coach, is that ignoring wounds, ignoring hurt, either that we have done to ourselves or that has been done to us. This could have been the wound, a father wound. You had a bad relationship or non-existent relationship with your dad, maybe your mom, a broken romantic relationship, failed business, maybe a failed marriage, an addiction, some other form of crisis or great loss. Through all of those things, we think that we can just ignore them. We can just move past them. And I'm all for not lingering on the past. I am all for not living in a trauma or wound identity. I am not what's been done to me or what I have done for sure. But we can't ignore the hurt. We can't ignore the pain. And so instead of making them disappear, which is what we're hopeful for, all we do is bury them deeper and deeper in the ground. And what you may be experiencing right now, or you will soon experience, is all of a sudden somebody's going to find the bodies. And though I hope we're not going to go dig up real physical bodies that you've buried somewhere in your life, what is going to start to be dug up is anger, is withdrawal, is control, or is even overachievement. You see, because the more frustrated I get, the more that I try to bury those things, ignore them really, I get angry. I'm more short-tempered. I'm more frustrated. You know how this happens, right? When you are trying to just ignore those little small things that keep bothering you, but then they build and build and build, and before long, it's a massive explosion. Or maybe, the more frustrated you get and you sort of feel like you have nowhere to go, and so you just withdraw farther. Um, or again, overachievement is if I just achieve success, I can start to dim all of those negative things from the past. But the reality of the matter is all of those things are just the stench of the bodies coming through the ground. And it can't be ignored forever. And that may be what you are feeling right now. And so the step one of the wound analysis framework is going to require us to acknowledge this hurt. If you've read my book, you'll know that across 9 chapters, I lay out 9 significant seasons of hurt in my life. And man, it required a lot of unearthing, re-earthing painful moments, painful experiences. The fact that, when I was dating a girl who I'd given up so much of my life for, she got pregnant by somebody else, but close to the same time that we were messing around with each other. And I took the responsibility to take care of that child, put my name on the birth certificate, even pay some child support. I mean, I was a senior in high school when this was happening. Um, it freaking hurt, man, when she came to me that day and said, "I can't do this anymore." And I had no right. I had no real authority over that situation because I wasn't really that girl's father. And in a moment, she was ripped from me. All the love, my family's love for that child. It hurt so bad. And as I think back on that, and I'll get into this a little bit further, but man, it caused a ripple effect. It changed the way that for a long time I saw women because I felt so used that all of a sudden I didn't want to invest a lot into women anymore. I just wanted to get what felt good out of them. When you're going to list out wounds, you got to list out the experience, not just the emotion. This is not about blaming. This is not about dramatizing. This is just about telling the truth. Here's what happened. Here's who hurt me. The cost of not doing that could be far more significant than you can imagine right now. So, my encouragement to you here practically as it relates to acknowledging the hurt, this first step in the framework, is to just write down 3 moments that as you think back a week, a month, a year, 10 years, 40 years, Write down 3 moments that still carry emotional weight in your life. And then I just want you to look at each one of those and I want you to ask this question or answer this question. When did I learn I had to be strong instead of honest? When did I learn that I had to be strong? I had to just bury the body instead of being honest with the fact that it was there. Once you name that, once you can name that wound, then it starts to reveal what it's been shaping. And again, for me, as I wrote my book, some of these went back decades. And so I started to realize just how profound the impact was over the course of my life. So that moves into step 2 of this wound analysis framework, which is we have to realize its effects. We have to realize the effects of the wound. You see, wounds don't just hurt, they train you. This is why we flinch. You probably wouldn't flinch if someone tried to punch you, if something hadn't hit you and hurt you before. And so you create you develop this natural aversion to things coming at your face. We are trained to respond and react to the previous hurts. This is why emotional trauma can be so devastating to our future. And again, these are things as men, which is the primary audience listening and watching, these are the things we don't typically talk about. This is too weak. But you realize that these are the very things holding you back from being the strong man that you really want. Every single wound, when we start to realize the effects, the impacts of this hurt from our past, we start to realize that every single one of them, every hurt produces a belief about a person, a belief about a situation. You know, this is the all women are evil. This is the nobody will support me. This is the I don't have anybody in my life that cares about me. This is the I'm a failure. This is the I'm never going to be successful. I'm an embarrassment. I'm not worthy. Belief then drives behaviors because when we start to think those things, we start to act as if. We start to act as if they're true, even though they're not. And then those beliefs will end up driving the behaviors. And behaviors then shape the relationships, shape our leadership style, shape our faith posture, shape how we are as a husband and a father. Again, back to that one example I gave, because of the way I was treated by one woman, I therefore started to see every woman differently. I started to treat every woman differently. My mom didn't raise me to go sleep around with other women. But all of a sudden, I just started to think like, why would I give a woman anything other than that? Because all I'm going to do is be hurt. You feel me? Step 2 of this wound analysis framework, realizing the effect, requires us to identify our negative beliefs and then recognize the coping strategies or avoidance patterns that we have developed. And some of those common ones that I developed over the years and that I've seen so many of my clients develop are overworking to feel worthy, right? If anything has created in us a lack of worth, like that one, right? This woman just checks out on me. Or maybe when my dad left and all of a sudden I'm like, man, my dad doesn't even love me enough to stay. Whether these things are true or not, these are the feelings and the thoughts that we have. This is the truth we tell ourselves. And so we rush to start working to prove our worth. If I'm just successful, then this is what I see in so many high performing men. So many men that have achieved professional success are working to prove some lack of worth in another area of life. I see again, another common pattern is the emotional withdrawal of men to stay safe. I'm not going to open myself up to anybody because I don't want to let that in again. Men oftentimes will try to overly control situations, whether they're marriage, whether they're parenting, in their business, because if they believe that if they can control those situations, they can avoid being let down. The more that I can control my destiny, the more that I can reduce the risk of being let down. The more I can reduce the risk of being disappointed. And finally, another common pattern I see a lot, even in Christian men, is that the more I perform, the less I have to rely on God for my daily bread. I mean, this is just, it runs so rampant. So if you've ever said, I've learned I can't rely on anybody else. By the way, this one is often quoted as nobody's coming to save you, so you have to save yourself. Maybe you've said, I've learned that love is conditional. People will only love me if. Or maybe you've said some version of rest is not realistic. Rest is ridiculous. If you've said any version of any of those things, this is where you're stuck. And so practically, if you want to realize the effects of those wounds that you've listed out, I want to encourage you to identify one belief that you have that just might not be true, though it feels true. If there's any sense inside of you that you're not worthy, that is one that I would raise right to the top of the surface, because we are all worthy because of what Christ has done for us. And I would want you to ask yourself, where did I learn this? And is it aligned with who God says I am? Am I unlovable? Am I unworthy? Am I not good enough? Am I not far along enough? Am I unsafe? These are all lies from the pit of hell. That's not aligned with who God says you are or what God says about you. So realizing the effects means that after I acknowledge that I was hurt in this way by these people or by this person or by myself, then I start to recognize the ripple effect as I move forward. The good news, and yet the bad news for some of you, is healing doesn't end with awareness. You see, too often in this rapid adoption of self-awareness and emotional intelligence, too many people started saying, oh yeah, I'm totally aware. I get it. I know how I am. But then they don't do anything about it. And if you do not step through the doorway to transformation, your awareness means nothing, and it may not even be real awareness. So acknowledging the hurt, realizing the effects opens the door to transformation. And that's what it truly means to unlock my greatness. You see, the wounds that we have incurred, whether somebody did them to us or we did them to ourselves, they don't disqualify us. They refine us. This is the beauty of God. One of the many beauties of God is God never wastes pain. He redeems it. He reshapes it, and he repurposes it. We see this in the story of Jonah. We see this in the story of Joseph. We see this in the story of Moses. We see this in the story of Peter, minor to massive to absolutely catastrophic screw-ups that led to serious wounds. And yet Jesus redeems it, reshapes it, and repurposes it. Here's the beauty. Is healing does not even attempt to erase the past. It redeems it for its influence. Think about all of the crap. I was just telling my wife, Michelle, about this yesterday, I think. There was this crazy story, and I can't get into all the details, but I was able to help financially support a guy that's in a really bad way right now. Wasn't going to be able to pay some bills this month, was going to get some utilities shut off. And by the grace of God, I just happened to be financially blessed myself with a new client, and I was able to pass that along to this guy. And I said, babe, we were driving in the car, and I said, isn't it so amazing the way God works? And I said, think about this. I said, the only way I was able to help get this guy was because my relationship with this other guy, who's one of my close friends now. I said, but the only way that I was able to interact with that guy was because of the specific industry that I serve in. And the only way that that guy noticed me in this noise and sea of people of this industry that I serve in was because I wrote a book. And that book, babe, wasn't it crazy that I wrote this book airing out all the dirty laundry and all the bad things that I did and were done to me? I said, babe, God used our pain to help this guy from getting his utilities shut off. If I would have hid that, he may be out on the street. He may be without a necessity to live. That doesn't make me great. That makes Jesus great. I don't want to erase my past. Sure, I wish I could do things differently, but I can't. So instead, because I realize that I can't erase it, I might as well seek to redeem it so its influence can impact those that God brings into my life. Not just for their good, but for mine too. This is step 3 of the wound analysis framework, is unlocking the greatness. I'm extracting the lessons from acknowledging the hurt and realizing the effects. And I'm creating this action plan for growth. How, once I admit what's been done and understand how it impacts me, how can I figure out how to use that for my good and God's glory? I mean, it starts by submitting to God. The greatest strength a man can possibly display is surrender to God and his will. A real man, all the courage in the world, has no courage at all if he's not willing to be obedient to God and what he calls him to. And if you want to grow, if you truly want to become great, if you truly want to achieve incredible things in this world, you ain't going to be able to hustle your way to them. You're going to have to align to who God's called you to be. And so practically here, if you've acknowledged the hurt, you've realized the effects, and you want to start creating a pathway forward, I would say identify one lesson that God may be teaching you through this past pain. And then commit to one tangible action. Maybe you need to have a conversation with somebody. Maybe you need to create a boundary. Maybe you need to hire a coach. Maybe you need to join a community. Maybe you need to invest your time and attention into a spiritual discipline. Walking through the wound analysis framework is where your pain stops. It stops being your excuse. And instead, it starts becoming your greatest asset and your greatest assignment. But the question is whether or not you're going to do anything. So 3 takeaways, 1 question for reflection, and then a call into something even greater. 3 takeaways recapping if you just want to get right to the point. Number 1 is healing starts when you are willing to honestly name the wound. 2, growth happens when you understand how your pain shaped your beliefs. And 3, greatness is unlocked when you let God redeem what hurt you. And so if any one or all 3 of those things stood out to you, then my challenge to you is to dig into this question. What part of my life am I still protecting instead of healing? And what would obedience look like this week to no longer protecting it, but instead healing? If this resonates with you, if this message resonates with you, if this episode resonates with you, I want to invite you into the next step. And this is something that is very fresh. It is very new, but it is something that God has called me to step into. And it's being called the Restoration Initiative. The first one is going to be happening on April 10th, 2026 here in Southern California, Orange County, California. So whether you're sick of the weather in the South or the East and want to get out of Dodge, or you truly feel led to restore the man that God has created you to be, then I want to invite you to learn a little bit more. This is going to be a one-day intensive. It's an in-person experience, and it's for men that are ready to confront what's holding them back and step fully into who God has created them to be. This is not a motivational event. This is not therapy. This is going to be a guided, biblically grounded environment for identity restoration and leadership formation. You can go to therestorationintensive.com. I'll put the links down below. But if you go to therestorationinitiative.com, therestorationintensive.com down below, you can learn more. You can apply. We're only going to take 12 men into this. We want this to be intimate. We want this to be intentional, and we want this to be transformational. There will be a dinner the night before. We will spend the entire day workshopping through this. This is going to be interactive. We will have a celebratory dinner that night. And then for those that want to stick around, we're going to have fun and do a little bit of adventure the next day. So you can either stick around for one night, 2 nights. The experience will include meals, a place for you to stay, transportation to get you around to where you need to go. I deeply believe that this is what God is calling many of you into. The question is whether or not you're going to take the steps necessary. This isn't about reliving pain like therapy often does. It's about reclaiming clarity, grabbing onto that freedom, and pursuing the purpose that God has called you to. Healing is not weakness, it's leadership. And I'll close with this. Greatness is not about what you achieve. It is about who you are becoming. So stay grounded, stay authentic, stay purposeful. Chat soon.